Welcome to the GameShow Global Esports Cup here on, well, no channel really. This is just going to be recorded as a VOD. There are currently some pretty major issues going on with the Azubu streaming platform, and we're not actually able to show you this live. But I'm Grandis V, and I'll be joining you for what will be the start of a best-of-5 series to decide who will be the last remaining team to go to Vilnius from the American regions, the only team from the American regions to make it. Complexity and EWolves have fought long and hard. I wasn't able to see much of the draft since we've been trying hard to actually get this stream on live, but that didn't work out. So we'll just get a quick rundown of everybody and what they're playing. Swindles will be handling the Darks here. This should be Zizzy, I'd expect, on the Tiny. Z-Freak on the Bounty Hunter. Chessie will be handling his Wind Ranger. And Vlad on the Io. If you give Complexity their IO, they'll take it 9 times out of 10. For the side of EWolves, that'll be Mystico playing on the Tusk, currently over in the sidelines down the bottom lane, accompanied by Strange on the Gyrocopter. And it is pretty strange that he is going to be going down to the bottom lane. We'll touch on that in a bit. Smash is going to be handling the Bristback, going mid against the IO Tiny with the safe lane farming Shadow Fiend by Van, supported by Masoku's Disruptor. Now these lanes are very interesting across the board coming out from EWolves, and I'm not exactly sure if they get a good exchange when it comes to these lanes. Really, the Shadow Fiend Disruptor is not a naturally great dual lane. It's not awful against the Darkseer Bounty Hunter, but not awesome either. The Bristleback does usually fare pretty well against the IO Tiny. The Quills do a lot of damage in this matchup, and I think this was one of the big things that they were drafting for based on the order of the picks. Originally, I thought it would have been Smash's Shadow Fiend, but Van is more than adept on the hero, so we'll see him snag that as well. And Complexity, even though I usually don't like safe lane Wind Ranger, she should be doing just fine down here. Still has a point to invest and knows that Ice Shards have a stupidly long cooldown, that the Tusk doesn't have mana, so it's just able to back off and salve up and be just fine. Still, I don't think EWolves have successfully taken Complexity out of their comfort zone with this draft, or with these lanes. The IO Tiny is a pairing that you're going to see Complexity go for every time it's available, near enough. Especially if they can get their hands on the Darkseer too. Darkseer was first picked in this draft. As far as the draft is concerned, at least I know that much. But we have a pause. Yeah, just trying to figure out what's going on with this stream. Hopefully you're able to watch this live, but if not, I'm glad you could join us for the VOD, just to see as much of these games as possible, and it should be very interesting. As a whole, Complexity are usually a very defensive team. Are very good at reacting to aggressive play, and that's really where they're at their strongest. And Darkseer tends to fit that perfectly. Very passive early game. Swindle's Darkseer is one of his better heroes and one of Complexity's favorite ways to start off their drafts. This game, they are going to be going for a little bit of aggression themselves, picking up the Bounty Hunter, and will look to get pickoffs here and there, but as a whole, they're going to be fine just passively farming with the late game power of an IO Tiny and a Wind Ranger. Their ability to transition teamfight wins into towers is almost unparalleled, between Agnum's Focus Fire and the Agnum Scepter on the Tiny also just being an amazing tool at doing that. So when you do go for these dual lane versus dual lanes, or at least in top lane dual lane versus dual lane, a dual lane mid for Complexity, leaving the Wind Ranger 1v2, 1v1, you don't have that many rotations, although an Invis Tusk does shake things up. The IO is not tethered to the Tiny for now. The Quills are going to start stacking up, and the tether is not quite going to save him, or is it? No, the Quills, too much damage coming up from Smash, and they're going to be able to kill him off. Nice first blood coming up from EWolves, and sometimes it is just that one lucky rune to secure it for yourself. And Tusk is kind of the X-Factor hero for EWolves, the one that can make rotations happen around the map. The Wind Ranger versus the Gyrocopter 1v1. Gyro should be reasonably comfortable in this lane. Not to say the Wind Ranger is going to be uncomfortable and that she's going to be doing poorly. Chessie's very adept at this hero and very adept in a 1v1 situation. That said, I think the Gyro will be just fine. We have an Iron Shield Bounty Hunter rotating down onto Strange. They are going to get the Iron Shield to open up onto him with the Janata slow. He's a lot of trouble. Power shot through. And they're going to punish the Tusk for moving around and leaving the Gyrocopter alone. If it is just 1v1, Gyrocopter would probably be fine, but yeah, it's really this Bounty and Tusk that can shake things up for either side. And Complexity seem to have gotten the better half of this exchange. Still top lane, the Shadow Fiend is doing very well. Against Darkseer, you have a lot of ways to keep the lane pushed out. One of the big reasons why Shadow Fiend is so good in the mid lane is the fact that he can always keep the wave away from himself. He'll be able to go into the jungle, farm up those stacks. And once you get higher damage, can very easily kill off those Iron Shell creeps. So get a glimpse back onto Swindles, but I don't think they're going to do anything off the back of it. Even though it doesn't happen there, once more levels come out from this Shadow Fiend, once he gets like level 5, level 7, there is killing potential on the Darkseer if he's taken too much harass. Tank too much harass? I guess it works both ways. Next round of runes going to come out. Bounty rune for the Tusk, Illusion rune for the Bristleback. Nothing too interesting there. Yeah, I think Complexity are fine with this passive farming state, although bottom lane Missile is going to do quite a chunk to Wind Ranger. 2 points Rocket, not something we see very often from the Gyrocopter. But it does give him a lot more killing potential against the Wind Ranger. We might see that come into play. Chessie's going to be massively annoyed by that, and will be forced all the way back to base because of it. It feels like this is going to play kind of like an offlane Gyrocopter. Granted, that is where he's landing, but mid lane, the Bristleback in a lot of trouble here is getting some quill stacks, though. They do need to respect that he does have a lot of damage, and they can't quite kill him yet. They have another toss, though. Can they get the vision for it? They see him tossing in the IO. Not going to kill him, but the auto attack afterwards will. Vlad is going to get that. Now, here comes the Disruptor from the sidelines. Vlad in a bit of a pickle, but it looks like he is going to safely get out of said pickle and be able to back off to safety. Top lane, Mango gonna be popped by Swindles, trying to run away, the glimpse back in. The raise actually doesn't deal damage to Swindles, but I think he still dies. Right click from the Disruptor is going to do him in. 2 to 3 is going to be our kill score. Van is going to take a lot of damage from these double Ion Shell creeps, but not going to be lethal. His bottom lane, they do aggress onto Strange. The Gyrocopter, yeah, as I was saying, it's going to be more a utility gyro. Isn't going to be flash farming nearly as much as he would in other games, because all of the jungle space and all of the ancient space is going to be given to the Bristleback and the Shadow Fiend respectively. Van is going to have this area on the map pretty much on lockdown. His mid lane, the Bristleback's going for a little bit of a dive onto the Tiny, now sustained by the IO. The orbs, almost enough damage. Tiny's taking a lot of quills, 6 stacks under the tower, and the quills will kill him. Ooh, such a low base armor hero. Bristleback is definitely something you need to be afraid of. Only 1 armor, 5% physical damage resist against a Bristleback means next to nothing. That's effectively pure damage quills, and that is not something any hero can tank comfortably, and especially not a Tiny. Oh, he could taste that kill. He really wanted it, but not going to be able to find it, unfortunately for him. Now, tethered up to an Invis Bounty Hunter. Extra bit of movement speed can go a long way. Even without boots, the bounty is pretty quick, and maybe fast enough to kill off this Disruptor. Oh, the Orb of Venom slow and the Janata slow, it is a possibility. But this bounty hunter is getting really close to having his level 6. The Shadow Fiend has no idea where the IO is until it's probably too late. Goes for a double raise onto Swindles. And by the time he knows he's getting ganked, he's already dead. They might even be able to chase forward for Masoku here under the tower. They are going to drop the IO spirits into him. A lot of damage onto that hero. No, Vlad 2-0-1. This IO is getting dangerously close to having level 6. And the supporting cast for Complexity are getting a lot more experience than you'd normally expect supports to. Because of these dual lanes. Mid lane. Oh, they tried to go for a kill with the Wind Ranger. Turns for the power shot. Is going to kill off the Bristleback. Nicely sniped there, Chessie. And with a toss auto attack, the Tiny is going to be able to get another kill. 7-3 in Complexity are getting a lot of momentum, and that's scary when you have an IO and a Bounty Hunter. So very good when you're ahead. Now a double kill for the Bounty is top lane. They'll kill off the Shadow Fiend another time. Now down to 7 souls. This is becoming a train wreck for EWolves. Oh, very unfortunate for them. They have heroes that inside this passive, or inside a passive game, could have very easily stacked up and farmed. The Ancients are currently triple stacked, I think. 2 Dragons, 1 Thunderhide. For the Bristleback to get his farm up. And that'll be nice for Smash, I suppose, but it really feels like getting this relocated and getting this track up and running is going to make it so very hard for EWolves to move around this map when you have so much solo killing potential from the Wind Ranger and the Tiny. And I'd love to see maybe a blink on the Wind Ranger soon, or a blink on the Tiny, either one, and just hunt down the Shadow Fiend relentlessly. He's really sad. I mean, of course, if we take a look at his CS, he's top of the chart. You expect nothing less from a Shadow Fiend. He's not farming inefficiently, but he's just died twice in quick succession. If they're able to keep that up, Van could very easily be shut down, especially now that you have an Iron Shell Bounty Hunter roaming into his woods. Now, if they don't keep up this pressure, Van can still completely snowball out of control. He's not in a bad spot, but he's not in a good spot either here. But he has the potential to be in a really bad spot. Here comes Bounty Hunter. That Iron Shell's still ticking for a little bit. Drops a Shuriken, relocate him from the sidelines, tossing the IO. Dead Shadow Fiend. And now, trying to get out with everybody else. Vlad is dropping low. Here comes Bristleback. Smash is going to be able to smash the little light bulb there as he punches him down. Still, a 1-for-1 trade is fine for Complexity, especially when you have track involved. But now the Bounty Hunter in a lot of trouble to call down is going to give them vision of the Bounty juking through the trees right into a Disruptor. There's nowhere to run. Still, I don't think that trade is bad for Complexity by any means. Hopefully the fight recap will shed a little bit of light on the exact numbers. Maybe I missed it. No, there you are. Yeah, going to be slightly better for EWolves, especially with the Gyrocopter and the Bristleback benefiting from that a lot. But with how much gold the Tiny got, that's by no means bad. They're going to try for an avalanche in mid. Toss in a creep. Cheeky toss onto Van. Not going to follow up or do anything else other than that. Tiny can be so liberal with his mana when you're buddied up with Vlad and when you're buddied up with an IO in general. Just having that mana sustain, you're able to toss out combos like candy. Now 9-5. Complexity and EWolves are pretty close in this game. I mean, a 3,500 net worth advantage is not something to underestimate. No track kill, trying to look for it on the Bristleback. He's a little too tanky with the maxed out passive. I mean the Bristleback passive, not Warpath, which is available level 1 for the Bristle, but he's incredibly tanky. That Blink Dagger is up on the Tiny, though. It feels like Complexity are the team to have momentum, and that's just not a metric that can be really measured nearly as well. If they slow down, if they lose their bounty hunter a couple times, that could be very terrible for them. They are going to lose that bounty now. Shackle not going to latch. This guy's going to be able to sidestep that one. Power shot thrown? Also not going to connect. And it feels like EWolves are starting to get back on their feet, but this Tusk especially has really kind of slowed down. He's not able to find any farming space on this map. The EWolves lineup is a tad bit greedy when it comes to what they want to be farming. Toss is going to be thrown, kills off the tower, snowballing in. They want to go for Vlad, but he has a little bit backup. The snowball's going to connect, but he has an Invis Bounty Hunter here. They'll track up, Chur can bounce, and with the Wisp Spirits, that was a nice kill coming out from Complexity. The Bristlebacks in the front lines will be able to kill off the IO, but the Shadow Fiend falls to the Avatos, and Tiny now chasing for more. Shackle doesn't even need to latch for them to be able to make this a 1-for-3. Gyrocopter's in the middle of the fray. Gonna throw a missile away of Chessie. I believe it's still a level 2 missile. Will do quite a chunk of damage, but not nearly enough as Complexity get a really good fight going their way. And it's not over yet. The Bristleback is tracked, and Z-Freak's going to lodge another track onto this Bristle. Trying to get in range for this toss could prove to be difficult, and they're not going to go for that. Instead, maybe the Gyrocopter, but no. They just don't have the vision in this area for them to comfortably go for any of those kills, and a wise call to retreat. Complexity will be safe under their towers, but after just those couple of fights, and especially that last one with so many track kills going their way, the amount of gold on Complexity's heroes is insane. Your Tiny top net worth chart, followed by the Darkseer Wind Ranger, and even for a brief bit, the Eye was out farming the Shadow Fiend, and that's just never something you want to see. And even though the Eye is not out farming the Shadow Fiend anymore, he's still able to have a much greater impact with just the Buckler, Urn, Wand, Boots, Bottle than the Shadow Fiend is with the Treads, Aquila, and his magic wand. Oh, Blink Avatos. Sorry for missing that one. Set up by that high ground vision ward. They now know that that's warded, and they get a nice ice shards onto the Tiny. Can they get him out to safety? Vlad's not going to recall him out. They actually don't need to relocate Zizzy for now, and he's just going to toss the Gyrocopter up in the air. Focus firing down. Avalanche connects on the 3. Oh, vacuum back power shot. And now they're chasing for the last remaining hero. Toss him back into the Wind Ranger, why not? Van trying to channel that Requiem will get canceled. And they're just going to punch him. 17-7, and Complexity are starting to own it up. You need to ban IO. You cannot give them this many comfort heroes. In fact, if we take a look across the board, Complexity's draft, this is probably about as comfortable as they will get, period. And although I do like the lanes coming out from EWolves, I thought it was an interesting idea to distribute them how they did. Now, Complexity are so good even when they're behind at finding opportunities to fight, and EWolves needed to get an edge these lanes. Even though they do have heroes that are very good at passively farming, the Bristleback can accelerate him through stacks, and the Gyrocopter can as well. Same with the Shadow Fiend. They're great if you give them space. But they wouldn't get that space unless they themselves are finding aggressive moves and seizing map control aggressively away from complexity. And now they're in a really hard spot. This game is looking like it's almost over. Tier 2 tower in the bottom lane is going to fall. Now, how are they going to be able to bring this one back? A lot of it rests on the static Storm Kinetic Field, I want to say. They're snowballing into Vlad. Vlad is already very low, doesn't have any mana, and doesn't have a tether away, but surged out by the Darkseer, backing back into the wall. They're just kiting them to no end, turning for the Avalanche. Toss up in the air. They are going to be able to quill down the Tiny. That is a really big pickup for them. And Swindle's also not out of the woods yet. He's going to try to surge away from the Gyrocopter, chasing forward. Strange is going to have another Rocket Barrage soon. Shackle is not going to latch, and maybe they're going to be able to chase him down. 3 points Rocket. This thing is gonna sting. Run away, Darkseer. He's surging out, trying to get out to safety. The Rocket's gonna connect, and with another Rocket will be dropped. Rocket Barrage is there, glimpse back, and Darkseer's gonna die one way or another. Oh, Swindle's just consigned to his fate. Oh, maybe I spoke too soon. EWolves are showing signs of life. Still not going to put a major dent into the complexity lead from once an 11,000 advantage complexity side, now down to an 8,000 advantage. Now, this tower, maybe things are looking a little bit better for them. Oh, it's still EWolves, just with the levels that they're getting, are allowed to fight. And I do like that Gyrocopter hasn't gone for the flat cannon build. I don't think that's what his team needed this game. Granted, I think there's a lot of other heroes inside the game that could have functioned in this role much better than the Gyrocopter. But they need some sort of teamfight control. And they found it in that last engagement. Now you have your Vanguard up for the Bristleback, because he's going to start working down that Ancient stack. Only 3. Hasn't actually made that any greater for himself, but it does get them a little bit more space. Now, Tiny is still huge. Don't get me wrong, and now relocating. They're going to try to kill off the Bristleback, but a beautiful bait coming out from the side of EWolves. They have everybody behind him. And granted, they're dropping low, but low doesn't quite cut it. They need more help. Here comes the Wind Ranger. She's going to be able to focus down the Gyrocopter, looking for the power shot, maybe. Backing back onto Van. Not going to be able to kill him off. Jesse, surged up, has the Force Staff ready. He's going to be glimpsed all the way home, it seems. Shackle is not going to latch. A 2-for-1. Snowballing away into the creep wave. That's going to be Mystico, I think, to retreat? Yeah, they just don't have the appropriate catches. Shuriken plus power shot. Probably would have killed there. But he'll be fine. The bigger thing is the fact that they steal a couple of these big creeps. Even if it's only one, that's a big creep that the Bristleback is never going to see in his life. It's pretty nice for complexity that they get that. Still costs them the IO and the Tiny. Shadowfiend going to be bumped into by the Bounty Hunter. Applies the track. Cheeky Shuriken. Now Van's going to just go ahead and go back to farming, although he knows he's been spotted. This Bounty Hunter has given so much intel to the side of complexity, it's not even funny. And he's only died twice. For how aggressive he's been posturing, this is really good. He's almost at a Solar Crest. That's pretty crazy. It'll be great at killing off the Bristle and anybody else for that matter. A minor bump in the road, it feels, for complexity. EWolves just don't have the heroes to control the pace of the game. Tusk can't play nearly as aggressive as the likes of this Bounty Hunter. The solo kill potential coming out from EWolves' cores is not nearly as high as Complexity's Tiny or Wind Ranger even. They have a blink on the Shadow Fiend. And although that's a great item to have on SF, I'm not sure if it's the item they need this game. Oh, maybe. I don't know, it is going to allow him to split push a little bit better. It's good against the relocate. If you see that relocate coming your way, you're able to buy yourself a lot of space. Now Swindles, potentially in a little bit of trouble here. They're going to spot him inside the trees, open up with the charge. They have a glimpse available. I don't think they even need it. He's blown sky high. Walrus Punch and the Rocket Barrage will secure the kill for Strange. 13-19. Despite complexity, still farming very well. On more cores than EWolves. So this Bristleback especially has fallen very far behind when it comes to his CS. They're still finding a couple of these fights, and the last couple of engagements have not had track involved for complexity, which is very unfortunate for them. The early game, Bounty Hunter was all over the map and all over the enemy team, getting kills left, right, and center, but he hasn't been able to really bring him bank off of that track yet. It could still very easily happen, but complexity have been slowed. Now down to less than a 6,000 net worth lead. And lower than a 3,000 experience lead. And Yeah, it really does feel like we're just biding our time until a bigger fight opportunity arises. Avalanche toss is going to be thrown in mid as well, Tiny's going to pull off the aggro, but more important is the fact that Tiny has his full Aghanim Scepter. Really big item. To speak of item progression for EWolves, they're not lacking so much either. Crimson Guard in this Bristleback, and Smash is hasted. I don't think he's going to be able to find anything with it. In fact, he might need to be a little bit careful here. Just the power of being able to relocate off the back of any shackle that latches from Chessie is amazing for complexity. 3 heroes converge from EWolves. They know that they haven't been spotted, or at least they have a pretty good idea that they haven't been. Dropping a sentry down on the ground. Laying in wait. They don't really see anything. In fact, they see nothing. The Bounty Hunter has evaded detection even though he shows up on the minimap. That's just a spectator bug. There's just not a jump. Chessie's playing so defensively up in this high ground. I think he knows, or at least has a pretty good idea of what's happening. They're going to look for this tier 2 tower top. Tiny's damage isn't all that great yet when it comes to dealing damage to the towers, but his ability to flash farm is incredibly increased. Ooh, Dire's Courier is going to be sniped. Nicely done, Bounty Hunter. Well, sorry for missing that, but if we take a look at what was on, that's an Ogre Club. Owned by Smash, presumably for his BKB, maybe a Sanjin Yasha? No matter what it is, it's nice to get that extra bit of gold when you're so slowed down in a game. Drums popped up top. EWolves really do want to find a fight, but I don't think they will. And Complexity are fine in this passive state. Missile going to chase all the way after the Tiny. Across the map, he's going to get bonked. But nothing more than just a little poke. If we take a look at the frequency of kills, it's slowed down almost to nothing. Most of these have been towers here and there. Pick off isolated every once in a while, but I think the more interesting thing is that the slope is going back in favor of Complexity. They're just able to use more of the map, relocating top lane. They want to fight Static Storm. It's going to be right on top of where the Io and Tiny are. They'll punch, stay up in the air, gets his toss, but the snowball dodges the toss damage. And now they're in a lot of trouble. The Gyrocopter is going to be able to run out of here, I want to say. Disruptor, not so much. Wind Ranger is here. Focus fire, not going to kill him, but the toss will. This time around, it's not going to be dodge. 2 clean kills for the Complexity side. Surging forward, the Tiny wants a little bit more. As Avalanche toss combo is available, tosses them forward. Toscan is going to get the power shot kill. That was pretty cute. 6 stacks of the quills. He does need to be very careful. Smash is a very threatening force. Shackled to a tree, not so threatening anymore. Toss in. Darkseer is going to be able to get the kill, I believe, with Ion Shell damage. 4 heroes hit the deck for EWolves after a long period. Lord Complexity, well, we haven't been doing all that much. They're going to be able to pull that through in a big way. And a lot of what was lacking in the last fight for EWolves was damage from the Shadow Fiend. That defensive snowball at the start of it was really darn good. That could have been even worse for EWolves. So that's pretty scary, I'll be honest. Complexity are now going to get even bigger items, and they'll take out the tier 2 tower top lane if they hadn't already. Shadow Fiend's going to work towards his BKB, but it feels like that's just not enough. They were reasonably prepared, but the Disruptor Static Storm Kinetic Field, although it slows down the follow-up from Complexity, doesn't stop it. And without that crucial lockdown spell inside the fight, they just don't have very many answers. They just get run down. A little too squishy. And also, Snowball, a very long cooldown. They were able to stop that first Avatos, but there was another one primed by the end of that fight. And Complexity just didn't sustain any damage. And that's where the Shadow Fiend really needs to step it up in the future. We'll have to see if he's up for the task. Wind Ranger is going to go ahead and throw out a power shot mid. Force Staff not quite going to get Chessie up to the high ground, but Chessie should be fine. EWolves probably expect her to have gotten to the high ground, even if she wasn't. They just don't have the catch, and that's a really big issue from EWolves draft. Not to say that Bristleback, Gyrocopter, and Shadow Fiend are bad together. When you look at pairs of them, like having a Bristleback and a Gyrocopter in the same draft is fine. A Gyrocopter and a Shadow Fiend, you kind of get my drift. And having a Shadow Fiend Bristle is actually pretty good. The minus armor synergy, the physical damage is huge. But together, they kind of fill the same role. It feels like the 3 cores from EWolves are a tad bit redundant. You have a lot of damage, That's about it. Not a lot of control to add into the mix, and no way to set up these fights. And when Complexity are the ones calling the shots, probably not going to be doing too well. Vlad, welcome back. I'm not sure what happened to Io's model there, but it just kind of went poof. It disappeared. TPs towards the mid lane, but all of these rotations are being spotted out. Really nice aggressive wards coming up from Complexity. And they have a pretty good idea of what's going on. Even though they might not see this smoke, it looks like they backed off defensively enough to where this smoke isn't going to be spotted directly. They saw the heroes converge on this area, and I think they know. They're going to ping out on this high ground. They know what angle they're coming from, and Complexity should be just fine. They'll farm some Ancients with the Tiny and the Io. The Tiny's well on his way towards this Assault Cuirass. And really, that's scary. They're going to change this smoke idea into Roshan, EWolves. Maybe this is the original plan all along. It is falling quickly. They're going to be able to take it. Presence of the Dark Lord, 3 points into it. Not maxed out yet, but close enough. And Gu also has 3 points. Just that minus armor is crazy for taking out Roshan. Around the corner, Bounty Hunter is going to get a little bit of cold feet here. Looks like he's going to back off. They know he's TPing, no way to cancel it. And he'll be fine. Complexity, although that is unfortunate that they give up the Roshan, it's not the end of the world for them. The bigger thing is it buys EWolves time to get these BKBs online. Now you have the BKB, 10 seconds on the Shadow Fiend, and what will be a 10-second BKB on this Gyrocopter. That is huge. Even though they are very far behind. More than 12,000 net worth advantage in the favor of Complexity, and almost 10,000 experience in the favor of the Radiant team as well. 10-second match community is huge. A lot of the damage coming up from Complexity is magical, even though, of course, there are no slouches when it comes to the physical department either. Nice TP away by the Shadow Fiend. Not going to be able to get the Shuriken in time. Still, it's not nearly as potent as the Avatos or the power shots, the Shurikens that are being thrown out. They need to have this ability to stop that. It's really so annoying for them, and they'll have a chance at the very least. Even if they themselves have a bit of a lack of control, as long as they can mitigate the enemy team's control, they'll at least be fighting on more or less even footing if the BKB timings are good. And although it's not the ideal situation, of course, you want those BKBs to give you an advantage, it at least gives EWolves a shot. But as this game progresses later, it's going to be so hard for EWolves to combat against the split push power of the Tiny in particular, who has this Assault Cuirass. His damage onto towers is ridiculous, and his damage onto creeps just about as much. He is flash farming it like a champ. In fact, I think the more surprising thing is the fact that Darkseer has gotten so many CS. Swindles is farming incredibly efficiently, in fact has the highest CS this game. That's just impressive. I mean, Darkseer, of course, as far as offlaners is concerned, is not the slowest flash farming hero in the game, but between the two, I'd say Tiny, when he's partnered up with the IO, would be a lot faster. And he is farming heroes better than the Darkseer, and does have more net worth because of it, but all the cores from Complexity are getting more or less what they need. Jesse may be a little bit behind where he'd like to be. It's still 6-0-4 at the end of the day, and is not too heartbroken about it. This lane opponent, the Gyrocopter, although he has his basic core items up, has just not been able to have nearly as big an impact as this Wind Ranger. The game really has slowed down, and I don't think we expected anything other than that. Still, the third BKB is up for EWolves, the one on Smash, and they have a gem. If there ever was a time for them to go aggressive, that time is now. If they just let this go by passively, Complexity will win by the nature of their heroes and how well they are in this state of the game. Gem will be given to Smash. The Aegis is still going to be there for 2 minutes. In fact, exactly 2 minutes as I say that. Now, what's EWolves' move? Interesting Radiant Ward. It's a good one against Gem. And more than anything, it's just a ward that you're not going to take away. Does this block the camp? I think it might. Interesting. I'll have to keep an eye on that. That's very curious. But Tiny right now just farming up Ancients. No, they're going up top lane. BKB popped by the Gyrocopter. They're not going to save you from the focus fire. And just like that, Chissy's wicked sick. That BKB charge that I was talking up has meant next to nothing for EWolves. Chessie and Io are going to relocate back. The Tiny is going to blink mid and start pushing out here with the backup by the Io. Now that Vlad is rejoined back with his buddy. The overcharge up the Tiny put a lot of damage on this tower, but now should smell that something's up. They know about this impending rotation coming out from EWolves. And EWolves are just kind of outmaneuvering. Or Complexity are outmaneuvering EWolves. It's like that ward has since expired or been taken out by the gem. No matter which. Just interesting. I think that is a large camp blocking ward. I'm not 100% sure. I wasn't paying a lot of attention to it before then, but that's a cool spot. Complexity will keep on farming. It's only a matter of time before they find one opening that EWolves are going to get them. It's not a game that Complexity are concerned taking late, even though the scalability of a Bristleback Gyrocopter Shadow Fiend is pretty high. Vlad in a bit of trouble. You're just gonna get Walrus Punch to Oblivion with the gem on the Bristleback. They don't really care much for the Glimmer Cape, but losing the IO here and there doesn't really bother them much, especially since he's so very close to having that completed Vladimir's offering. I like that Vlad is picking up the Vlads. And maybe there's a little bit something more to that. Still, it's such a value item for the Tiny. Such a value item for the Wind Ranger too, although a little bit less so. Still, it's incredibly great for Complexity's side. Having those armor auras against a Shadow Fiend and against a Bristleback. EWolves rely on their physical damage a lot more than Complexity. Complexity just have a much more balanced damage output. When it comes to the initiations that they're able to find. In theory, I guess Razes and Gyrocopter are awesome. Don't get me wrong, it's just that they're never able to sit in melee range and throw those out, or not necessarily melee range, but close enough to be able to get those spells to have a big impact. And Complexity's positioning's just been a little too good. The Bounty Hunter now up to a large lump sum of gold, probably a Blink Dagger for him. The Blink Dagger is the one part of Complexity's lineup that isn't really scaling amazingly. But you know what? Everything else is working fine for them, and just being a moving ward and a walking ward on this map is pretty darn great. Although that has been slowed down, he's going to have to play a little bit more defensively against this gem. With the Blink, he can still lay down those tracks. Does Complexity continue farming up? Yeah, I don't know. EWolves are in a situation where Complexity are in their comfort zone, and EWolves not so much. The times where EWolves are at their finest, it's when Smash is snowballing, when they're getting aggressive on the enemy side of the map, when they're controlling everything. But right now they're not. And if nothing else, it's Complexity just gonna slow and steady lead this game. BKB's up by the Tiny. To me, this flags that Complexity are kind of done with the passive state for now and are getting ready to push high ground. Oh, they're gonna look for a relocate in mid. Shackle back. They kill off the Shadow Fiend in an instant. BKB popped by the Gyrocopter. They'll get a nice kinetic field static swarm. Vlad's on the outside of it, though. They're just not doing any damage to this time. Doesn't even care. He has a Solar Crest on. They'll glimpse him back. The eye is gonna be pulled back down to the bottom lane. BKB popped by Smash. Vlad is not in this fight anymore. The Tiny really wanted to stick around and get these last couple of kills, and maybe at the cost of his life, trying to TP away, they have no way to cancel it. The glimpse has already been spent, and Rocket's too long. And Strange, very low. He's gonna just die straight up. The glimpse is going to pull the Wind Ranger back into the creep wave, but I don't think that bothers her much at all. Complexity lose not a single hero. That's track kills. That's BKB charges down the tubes. One used by the Bristleback, one used by the Gyrocopter. I think that's 9 seconds on him and 8 seconds on the Gyro. Even so, that's amazing for Cole. They don't even have to use this BKB on Tiny. Was it even deliberate during that fight? I don't think so. Maybe it was. But still, now Complexity are going to be able to push high ground. And this Solar Crest and the Bounty Hunter is making it almost impossible for them to deal with the HP pool on this Tiny, as he wails away on their tier 3 tower. Towards the north, they are trying to get Chessie. They are going to get... Oh, one raise to connect, second raise not so much. Still negligible damage, and look back at your mid lane. You have melee barracks missing. You have a Tiny problem. And it's not a tiny problem. This guy's gigantic. Vacuum back, 4 heroes caught into it. The cleave! The minus damage onto the Tiny is going to reduce his output quite a lot, but not nearly enough to stop him. He pops his BKB and just goes to town. One more smack, and that's a dead Bristleback even with Crimson Guard activated. What's 50 damage block when your Tiny is hitting for 350? They'll buy back on Smash. Get a glimpse back onto Vlad. Poor guy. He's going to go down, but it's a worthy sacrifice to make when you get the full barracks trade in mid. And now Complexity are just going to casually walk this one off. They get a melee barracks top too. There's nothing but wins there. EWolves, they get Vlad. And Vlad is not an objective. Of course, he's doing a lot of work for his team. But that is the lowest farmed hero on the side of complexity, and that's it. That's all they get. Now, EWolves still maintain control of the gem. This is a silver lining for them. But as far as silver linings go, this one's pretty dull. Now, EWolves are going to snap back, look for a tier 2 tower, but the massive farm advantage for complexity, I just don't think they can fight into it. We'll see. That tier 2 is about all they're going to be able to pick up, though. This Tiny's threatening the top lane. He has BKB TP out in just a couple of seconds, so killing him off is going to be darn near impossible. Walrus Punch, I suppose, can cancel that, so there's something in response, but he'll just TP out after shoving out the wave. Again, it's a situation where complexity have the right wards in the right places, and are just keeping these lanes in such a position that EWolves just don't have any control. EWolves don't have the lineup that you can point at and say, look, they have a Magnus, they can have this huge team fight, ultimate combination, be able to wreck everything. I mean, if they did, like, if you replace this Bristleback with something like a Mag, although that's not really a Smash hero, then maybe you get that Gyrocopter call down in the Static Storm. You have a Requiem on top with the BKB channeling there, but oh, Shackle latches onto Smash, and they'll get into the front of him with the Focus Fire. He's gonna get ripped to shreds! Crimson Guard or not, it just doesn't seem to make any difference when the enemy team is this farm. Gem is going to be claimed. No buyback on the Bristleback. That's almost as good game. The stakes are high, though. This is a best of 5. Whoever wins here will be the American team to go to Vilnius and to go to the Studio Land for the GameShow Global Esports Cup. An important move for either of these teams. Surging forward, the Wind Ranger. They might have been able to think about going in, but still Chessie is so slippery. 9-0-6. His farm isn't that flashy, but his play certainly is, and this Tiny is unstoppable. 12-4-12. Focus Fire down, vacuum back. They'll pop the BKB, and without another Focus Fire, Gyrocopter will survive at the very least, but the Barrack's not so lucky. Complexity are going to get Megas here. I don't think there's a way for EWolves to stop it, and here you just have to think about going into game number 2. Ban out the IO. Do not give Complexity what they want in the draft. Take them out of their comfort zone. Play something you're comfortable with. Play like the Ember Spirit Mirana duo, or just get smashed on an aggressive hero that has solo kill potential. Bristleback, I've seen him play it, and he plays a good Bristle, don't get me wrong. It just doesn't feel like it Smash's wheelhouse. Even though he does do very well in certain games, this just wasn't the situation for it. Thanks for watching game number 1, Complexity versus EWolves. We're currently not live on Azubu. Hopefully we'll fix that for game number 2, but at least you're able to tune into the VOD. I've been GrandSV. If you like the cast, you can follow me at Twitter, at GrandSV, and we'll come back to you with game number 2 shortly. Or just move on to the next video. See you then.